Jon Snow first sensed the danger as a tremor in the half-forgotten thread that once bound his mind to the albino direwolf. He had grown accustomed to feeling ghosts' movements as a hush in his thoughts, the way a flickering torch brightens a darkened hall, the way a distant storm announces itself with a tightening of the air. In the years since he had first warged, that connection had become as natural as the beat of his own heart. But when the dead came again, staggering out of the forbidden forest beneath waning moonlight, something shifted. One moment ghosts crouched beside him at the palisade north of the New Gift village. The next, the wolf erupted forward without a sound, pale fur flashing across the snowpack like moonlight on river ice. Jon felt the surge of muscles beneath the pelt, felt the cold in Ghost's lungs, felt the raw hunger to protect. Then the bond tore in two. Jon screamed foreign words that clawed from his throat before he knew he was speaking. He never remembered them later, only the ragged taste of them on his tongue, and the iron in his nostrils as he vaulted from the rampart, stark sword in hand, following the translucent thread that fluttered just out of reach. The spearmen behind him shouted warnings, but he heard nothing except the growing roar inside his skull, a roar that ended in a silence so vast he thought the world had ceased. Ghost had reached the clearing ahead of the dead. He slammed into the leading corpse, ripped out half its throat, bowling the next two aside in a spray of blackened snow. Jon felt each movement, as if from a distance, as though he observed his friend through smoke glass. The bond, frayed, still held some vestige of connection, giving him one last, perfect moment of the direwolf in battle. So beautiful, he would think later, that even the darkness seemed to pause to watch. There were more dead than the watchers on the wall cry had warned. A score at least, perhaps more behind. The risen things moved like drunken shadows, armored in tatters of leather and ringmail ruined by frost and rot. Their eyes burned a hue Jon refused, even now, to call blue because the word held not enough chill. The first four fell beneath Ghost's fury. The fifth drove a broken spear down into the wolf's flank. Jon felt the crack of bone as if it rent his own ribs. He leaped upon the corpse, long claw flashing. His feet skidded on ice, and he chopped through rotten neck and frozen sinew, severing the thing's head in a single desperate blow. But the moment the steel met undead flesh, the thread in Jon's mind snapped. Something, someone, cut it clean. A void howled through him, colder than any wind beyond the wall, and Ghost's cries died into impossible silence. Jon kept swinging. He fought until the last corpse lay strewn and twitching, until the fire-bearing archers arrived, until arrows flaming with tar ended the spasms of undead limbs. By then the direwolf lay motionless in a hollow of churned snow. The spear had found Ghost's heart. When the torches ringed the clearing, Jon knelt beside what remained of his oldest companion. Snowflakes melted on the matted white coat, forming pearls that slid like tears along the curve of the wolf's muzzle. He placed both hands on the fur, closed his eyes, and reached. For years he had slipped into Ghost's skin, with nothing more than a breath and a wish. Once the transition brought fear, then it brought exhilaration, finally it brought peace. Now it brought nothing. His mind battered a gate that no longer existed, fell back bruised, again and again, while the men of the Night's Watch whispered around him. He felt nothing. That proved far worse than agony. They built a pyre at dawn. Melisandre had taught Jon new rites for death, but he rejected her red god on this morning and turned instead to older customs shared between the Watch and the free folk. Fire for cleansing, wolf songs for farewell. The wildlings ululated in broken harmony, while the Black Brothers murmured the vows none of them perfectly believed. Jon stood alone beneath the gray sky, clasping the carved dragonglass fetish Gilly's child had once offered, and said no words at all. When ashes drifted into the wind, the world seemed lighter, but only because something essential had been subtracted. The emptiness inside him echoed in old stone room, whose door you forgot to close, letting all heat leak away while you slept. That night, Jon tried again. He sat cross-legged in the great hall the free folk named Hearthhome, where Tormund Giantbane drank himself toward a state of unsteady forgetfulness, and he stared into the flames until the room dissolved around him. Instead of slipping into Ghost, he sought the crows outside, the snowy owl perched near the meat shed, the feral cat slinking among kegs. He found only blurred impressions, disjointed flashes that dissolved when he reached. His mind would crash against formless barriers, bounce, stagger, and fall back into his skull exhausted. He tasted blood where he had bitten his own tongue trying to push himself farther than safe. When he stopped, the fire gutters all seemed small. Bran once told him that every skin changer risked losing distinction between worlds. Jon now discovered a more terrible fate, to stand forever on the threshold and never pass. The gift that had shaped him, that had guided him through death and resurrection, through kinghood and exile, was gone. Worse, echoes of it lingered, mocking him with half-painted colors and whispers that vanished when turned toward. It was like trying to recall a name that lived on the tip of the tongue. Memory's phantom, always escaping. The healers said exhaustion. The maester's raven from Winterfell suggested stress. Aela the spear wife insisted the spirit of the dead wolf must be honored at the heart tree if Jon wanted the gods to restore the bond. Jon felt none of their attempts, heard none of their counsel. The emptiness was too loud. 2 nights later, the nightmares began. Jon stood on a field of ice that cracked beneath his weight, while fire rained from a black sky. Ghost padded beside him, whole again. Crimson eyes, bright, fur pristine. They walked among broken shields and shattered antlers. Jon sensed the bodies first. Hundreds sprawled like discarded dolls beneath the hoarfrost. Some armored, some naked to the cold, all bearing wounds that smoked with a chill older than seasons. These were men he had led, men who had trusted him. The direwolf looked at Jon, and in those eyes Jon saw accusation. Then Ghost vanished, swallowed by shadows that poured from fissures in the ice. Jon reached, pleading, but the bond was not there. He woke alone, shivering. On waking, he heard a distant roar. Not the risen dead this time, but the echo of a roar no human voice could make. 2 guards outside his door rushed in with torches. Jon had howled in his sleep. That was the start. The visions grew more vicious each evening. He slept only by the brew of moon tea, and Sourleaf Maester Emrys insisted would soothe him. The brew dulled waking senses, yet the nightmares sharpened. Snowfields became battlegrounds soaked in ghost fire, and always Ghost walked near, flayed or burned or chained, always silent, always retreating from Jon's grasp. He began to fear rest. He walked the village walls at midnight, adding his steps to the watch rotations, though he no longer wore the black cloak of Lord Commander. He pressed coin into the hands of builders to continue the stockade's expansion. Hammer and timber distracted him for a time. One afternoon, Arya arrived from Winterfell, riding a mare swift as the shadows she used to chase through castle halls. Arya moved like wind through any stronghold. Guards seldom noticed her until she was face to face. Jon had never kept secrets from her, so he tried not to keep this one, but words snarled in his throat. She saw enough in his eyes. She held him the way she had when they were children after Bran's falls. For a heartbeat, Jon felt that if he just opened his mouth, the pain would flow out. Instead, he bowed his head and gripped her fiercely, and the silence filled again with unspoken truth. "Come south," Arya urged that night as auroras shimmered above the far peaks. "Let Sam look at you. Let Bran help." But Bran was beyond reach now, traveling the Wyrnet, the letters said, walking the myriad routes of the world. Raven scrolls came infrequently, written in Bran's delicate hand yet steeped in riddles. Arya's offer was a lifeline, but Jon could not bring the terror south. He could not yield his duty again, even broken. Others feared him. Not openly, but watchmen avoided meeting his gaze when his eyes clouded silver. The free folk revered skin changers. A skin changer who had lost his shadow half unsettled them. They whispered of a man who might warg into stone or wind. To lose the beast was to lose balance. Word of Ghost's death traveled east with trappers, and west with trading crows. Offerings came. A young gray direwolf cub in chains. A white-tailed eagle brought half-starved. A pack of village hounds. Jon dismissed them all. Animals edged away from him anyway now, as if they sensed a fracture in nature surrounding him. In daylight, Jon managed duty, reinforcing watchposts, negotiating grain shipments from White Harbor, training spearwives and ravens-worn lads. His mind remained sharp for tactics, but every strategic conversation slid eventually to ghosts, another kind entirely. How many of the dead still roamed beyond the Frostfangs? Whether the others truly ceased with the fall of the Night King or merely slumbered? Each mention sent a cold line down Joan's spine, recalling moonlit corpses and a crimson-eyed direwolf stilled by a broken spear. Then came the blizzard, 3 weeks after Ghost's pyre, sealing the new gift under drifts higher than the palisade spikes. Hunting parties failed to return. Frostbitten refugees stumbled in with tales of torn camps and shapes in white distance. Something hunted them, something that did not leave the warmth of blood to stain the snow. John's failure gnawed deeper. Ghost would have scented intruders leagues away, would have warned, would have led them through hidden passes to flank. John still reached instinctively for the old vantage point, only to grasp emptiness. The storm lasted 9 days. On the 10th, the wind calmed as though taking a breath. Dawn revealed a corpse nailed upright against the main gate by a spear of hoarfrost, long white fingers clutching the gate seam. The corpse wore the faded leathers of a free folk hunter. Its eyes glowed that impossible hue. In the council hall, Tormund bellowed for a sortie, insisting he would avenge the boy's family this hour or freeze where he stood. Val, calm yet steel-sided, argued caution. The maester begged for time to analyze the corpse's runes. Someone had carved spirals along the length of the frost spear, shapes older than runic, first men scrawls. John sat silent until they finished, because the decision was already carved within him. "I ride," he said. "I must see who sent this warning." Arya leaned forward. "We ride, you mean?" They left Hearthhome at noon with a score of mounted fighters, a half-dozen archers strapped in furs, and 2 ravens riding the archers' gauntlets, the first trained messenger birds of Val's new flock. John rode the great destrier he had named Horfang, a heavy horse of northern lines, black as pitch save a star on its brow. Snow crunched with the weight of grudges left too long unanswered. They followed tracks toward the then valley. Strange marks, neither bootprint nor beast pad, claws perhaps yet wrong for any bear. They might have been carved by talons of ancient ice come alive. The further north they rode, the clearer those marks became, parallel grooves deep enough to swallow a boot, spaced as though the hunter strode on stilt legs longer than a man is tall. At dusk they reached a stone tor rising from the valley's heart. Smoke hissed from cracks where warmth met air. Something made camp inside, or something nested. John ordered a ring of torches and advanced with Arya and Val. 2 then warriors flanked them, copper spearheads gleaming faintly. Inside they found bones, hundreds, stacked like timber. Some were cracked open for marrow, others still dangled meat, frozen gray. Atop the grisly throne sat a creature half hidden by rags and deer hides. It rose with eerie grace, towering 8 feet, skeletal yet sinuous. Its limbs indeed ended in spurs of transparent ice, and a faint glow pulsed in hollows where eyes should have burned. No mortal thing shaped in the womb of the world could stand so. John knew then that the long night's end, heralded by the fire of dragons and the fall of the Night King, had been only an interlude. Whatever remnant of ancient darkness lingered had found shape again in this valley. The creature lifted one shard-like hand and pointed at John as a priest might point at blasphemy. John's breath frosted thick. He drew long claw, the Valyrian steel black and hungry for truth. And for the first time since Ghost's death, he felt something flicker in his mind. Not the warm conduit of warging, but a colder, sharper awareness, like an echo across icy water. The creature tilted its head. John felt the echo strengthen. It was reaching for him, reaching as wargs reach for wolves, but inverted, unnatural. He forced a barrier of will, remembering Maester Luwin's lessons of mind walls, remembering Melisandre's chants against shadowbinders. The shard hand closed, and a lance of frost hammered the ground between them, exploding snow dust to the rafters. Val's spear flew, guided by a reflex older than fear. It struck the creature's clavicle and shattered. Shards tinkled like bells. Arya darted left, blade in hand, seeking an opening. The thens crashed forward roaring. John held the creature's gaze. He sensed it wanted him specifically. Without Ghost, He was a doorway half open. The thing wanted to finish the breach. He remembered the void when his bond snapped, and the nights since without rest. All that absence folded inward, until it became weight, a singularity of grief. Perhaps the creature felt that vacuum and mistook it for weakness. John stepped toward it. Longclaw met Crystal Bone with a sound like ringing ice. The creature parried with an elbow spike, ripping sparks of frost. John's next blow carved an arc that scraped the thing's ribs, cracks spidered bluish. From those cracks seeped a mist colder than any winter. But every strike carved emptiness inside John as well. With each clang, he felt the faint flicker of the creature's mind scraping against his own jagged edges, searching for purchase. If it found one, it would occupy him, and the wall itself might crumble. Arya leapt onto the thing's back, daggers flashing, scoring grooves in its shoulder blades. The creature shrieked, a sound that twisted the snow swirling above the tor into a funnel of shards. Arya tumbled away as it spun, but John saw her left boot freeze instantly, where a stray tail of mist kissed it. She yanked free, leaving half a soul glued to the ground. John moved again, and this time he did not merely swing steel. In the instant before Longclaw met the creature's neck, he thrust his mind into the emptiness where Ghost once lived. He expected only void, but pain flared, and beyond pain, a glimmer. Not of Ghost, never Ghost, but of something older, rawer, born of need and fury. Perhaps Warg power does not vanish. Perhaps it mutates when its anchor is severed. John seized what remained and poured it through the sword. Valyrian steel erupted in black fire tinged with indigo. Where it touched the creature, flesh of ice and mist boiled. The thing collapsed inward, clawing air, shrieking 1,000 distant voices. And John felt it again. The creature tried to claw back through the gap in him, using their brief bond like a grappling hook. In that flicker he understood its hunger. It was not one being but a chorus of lost wights denied rest, seeking new flesh to pilot. John's will held them at bay. He whispered a name he had never spoken. Snowborn. The title the free folk sometimes gave him. He accepted all he had lost, and all he might still lose if he faltered. Then he severed the bond himself, cutting not with steel but with memory. The memory of Ghost howling at a full moon beyond the wall. The memory of a boy touching the warm fur of a half-grown pup, promising never to abandon it. He broke himself again, but by his own hand, and the link dissolved. The creature shattered, shards scattering across bones. Silence crashed like a wave. They burned the tor clean before dawn. Val carried the largest shard, dull now, to the pyre and set it atop the flames. It melted slowly, dripping black water that hissed like snakes and sparked violet. Arya watched with those gray eyes that always seemed to weigh truth itself. She said nothing. On the ride back, John realized the emptiness inside him felt different. Where once there was ragged, bleeding vacuum, now there was scar tissue, numb but sealed, hard but intact. He tried again to reach for a raven overhead, just to test. The bird remained distant, the bond inert. Yet he did not flinch at the failure. He simply acknowledged that some doors once shut must stay shut lest worse things push through. His gift was gone. He would learn to lead without it. At Hearthhome, maesters and spearwives greeted the returning party with cheers. They saw the shardless spear upon which the corpse had hung now broken, its carvings scraped away. They saw hope returned. John visited Ghost ashes before he slept. The pyre mound lay crusted by new frost. He knelt, placed one hand upon the cold stones, and whispered a farewell he had been too shattered to give weeks earlier. He thanked Ghost for every saved life, every midnight watch, every silent counsel in storms both war-born and heart-born. He promised to stand for the living as Ghost once stood for him. When he rose, the first light of sunrise spilled over the wall far to the south, gilding the snow in pale rose. John studied that distant line and thought of the realm, thought of Arya's offer, thought of Bran wandering roots and visions. He knew the Warg in him lay buried. Yet he also knew that a man need not be many-minded to serve. Sometimes one voice must speak for thousands. The nightmares lessened in nights that followed, though they never vanished. They returned only when storms gathered beyond the frost fangs, warning him of dangers ordinary scouts missed. In time he accepted them as part of him, scars that bled memory instead of flesh, reminders that the line between man and monster narrows when power rules the spirit. Years hence, ballads would tell of Snowborn who lost his wolf and kept his soul. They would say a man once walked in two skins and, losing one, learned the cost of possession. They would speak of a dire wolf blazing white against endless night, whose final act saved his master from an oblivion only half-life worse than death. They would speak of Ghost, the silent guardian, whose echo guides ravens still, though none hear it but the wind. John never sang those songs. He merely lived them, each dawn a pact renewed. He led watchmen and spearwives, rebuilt outposts, winter-proofed villages, drew treaty lines, and taught children to read the sky for omens. He laughed more softly and loved more carefully, for he understood how fragile connections might be. He guarded the wall of peace between realms, a wall forged not of ice nor steel, but of choices. And on nights when the aurora painted banners across the world's crown, he felt in his chest a faint stirring, not of power, not of bond, but of gratitude. Somewhere, beyond mortal senses, he hoped a white wolf ran across starfields, mouth parted in endless hunt, eyes forever bright. In that hope he found enough to sleep without fear. So did the gift of warging end, and so did a different gift begin. The gift to know loss without yielding to it, to lead without leaning on secret strengths, to face darkness as one man among many. Some called that gift weakness. Jon Snow called it freedom. And in freedom he discovered a truth even Bran's ravens could not deliver, that the greatest magic a man may wield is the courage to walk on a path stripped of magic, holding only the torch he lights himself, guided by memories of those who fell beside him yet whose spirits push him ever forward, deeper into the dawn. Steel rang against steel above the stockade, where the wind sang with winter's teeth, and Jon Snow felt the rhythm of practiced blade work flow again through muscles that had healed badly from too many battles. The practice yard was half-blanketed by hoarfrost. Each stump sent white dust pluming. Sir Jeremy Ricker, graying now but still stubbornly lean, drove forward in a series of overhand cuts meant to test Jon's balance. Jon met them, pivoting, letting Longclaw's Valyrian edge turn each blow aside with a hiss like frozen water sliding over shale. The Watchers, Raven Keepers, Spearwives, half a dozen lordlings sent north to earn names, cheered when Ricker's boot slipped, and Jon's follow-through stopped an inch from the man's gorget. Jon lowered the sword and offered a hand up. He did not smile, but he did not. Ricker accepted the clasp with a grunt that held the ghost of a grin. It was the first time since Ghost's death that Jon had endured a spar till the end. Tormund claimed the feat, demanded a feast. By dusk Hearth Home's long hall was thick with pine smoke, lamb fat, and the roar of joined folk. Horns of iced ale clacked over tales of the shard creature's fall. Arya sat cross-legged on a bench, polishing needle with a scrap of oiled wool while listening to Tormund's embellishments, her mouth twitching despite herself. Val drank more carefully, eyes always on the door. Jon kept to watered wine. He had not trusted strong drink since the nightmares. When the revel burned hottest, a cry rose beyond the palisade, raven wings and the gate drums beating the arrival sigil. A ranger hurtled through, cloak shredded, face white with more than cold. His breath fogged in urgent bursts. South riders, he managed. Standards of the crown. They seek the king in the north. Conversations froze mid-laughter. Jon felt a thrum like an arrow loosed. He stood, boots scraping the rush-strewn boards. Within heartbeats he crossed to the entry, pulling cloak over gambeson. Ricker, Arya, and Val followed. At the gate a column waited. A dozen knights in Baratheon livery, tempered by stark gray. The compromise sigil adopted after Winterfell bent knee to King Stannis in name, if not in heart. The riders parted to reveal Sir Davos Seaworth, his weather-carved face splitting into weary relief when he saw Jon. "Your Grace," Davos said. "I'd hoped the ravens had reached you already, but storms drove them off course. We ride for your counsel. No, for your sword. Jon bristled at the style. He had never taken the crown, calling himself simply Lord Snow beyond the wall. Yet he clasped Davos' forearm. What threat drags a hand of the king this far north? Davos handed over a scroll sealed with black wax. Jon broke it and read on torchlight, the glyphs crowded by an anxious royal scribe. As lines unfolded, the night pressed colder. Highgarden had fallen, not to siege or rebellion, but to plague, a sickness of ice. Those who succumbed arose with luminous eyes and spread the chill through touch. Maesters swore it was no winter fever. They spoke of ancient sorcery leaking southward from shattered lands, of an intelligence riding the plague's breath. Jon's stomach knotted. The shard creature had been a herald, not a lone horror. He looked to the sky, clear, star-hung, auroras faint along the horizon, and felt nothing in the void where ghosts' warning sense once beat. He had only ordinary eyes and the cold taste of foreboding. Davos continued. King Stannis moves his host to Blackwater Rush, mustering lords sworn and unsworn, but he lacks men hardened to this foe. He bids you bring every spear, every arrow, every secret learned in the Nightlands. Tormund snorted behind them. Southmen still think the wall is a market for sellswords. They would buy our hides cheap. One. Val's tone cut colder. But if the plague marches, the South's fall starves the North. We trade grain through King's Road come spring. No barley, no oats, no children. She turned to Jon. The wild wishes nothing southward. Yet the living must. Jon looked beyond the torches to the black waste littered by forgotten battles. Once he would have closed his eyes, communed with ghost, gauged far-off menace through the wolf's nose. Now, his choices had to be measured by talk, by raven, by logic. Davos, he said at last, tell your king I will march. We gather every clan and every watch brother who'll follow. But we do not ride as bannermen. We ride as free protectors. Davos' grin was thin but true. Stannis cares little for courtesy when swords are bared at his enemy's throat. Mobilization began before dawn. Horns carried down every valley, the black long note of the watch, the rolling echo of free folk drums. Runners woke campfires across snowfields. Stores counted for lean winter were reallotted to marching packs. Smiths hammered spare iron into arrowheads, thinner than custom, yet sharp enough for flesh, turned brittle by cold magic. Maester Emrys dosed ravens with healing draughts to survive long flights. Jon convened council in the watchtower, spread a tanned hide over the map, and pinned markers. Stannis' probable line along the Rose Road. Lord Mace Tyrell's forces scattered or dead. Plague perimeters moving from Bitterbridge toward Tumbleton. Arya traced a fingertip along the Mander. Too flat. We'd choke in retreat. Better take the foothills of the Red Mountains. Play cat rather than hound. D. Tormund countered. Mountains slow sled teams. Dead storms move like night. Flatlands give space for cavalry striking patterns. He swung a fist. Meet chill with charge. Val argued for river warfare, citing Ice Eater's aversion to running water. Truth or myth, none could certify. Riker pressed for immediate strike at provincial villages to save survivors. Jon listened, absorbing. At times he saw the meeting as ghost might, darting senses around each voice, trusting instinct. But the sense stayed blank. So he weighed merits purely as commander. Supply paths, fatigue, morale of a coalition never before fielded southward. Finally he spoke. We split force. Arya leads mountain scouts. Silent, fast eyes for weaknesses. Tormund leads the main host alongside Davos, down King's Road. Cavalry heavy, but outriders screen for plague freaks. Val and Riker, Skyr River traffic, fallback lines, ferries. We hammer only after our jaws close. Riker raised brow. And you, Lord Snow? Jon's hand cupped the pommel of Longclaw. I join Arya Ta. Intelligence decides where to swing the hammer. Silence accepted the plan. Davos nodded, respect shining. Parting Hearthhome felt like abandoning bones to wolves. Children lined the stockade as columns marched out. Little fists clutching knitted direwolf dolls, talismans of a legend now burned. John rode past, cloak snapping. He forced a smile. The children waved back uncertainly, as if glimpsing a shadow in the man that once housed a hero of wolves. On the third night south of Last Hearth, a blizzard smothered trail signs. Fiery beacons at watchposts blurred. Joan's smaller scout wing. 55 Rangers, Arya's ghosts as they named themselves, pressed into woodlands for shelter. Tents rose beneath bent firs, fires muffled in snow pits. John took first watch. Snowflakes thick as down-muffled hooves, footsteps, even breath. Yet within the hush, John sensed disturbance, the ordinary sort any tracker learns, a shift of branch weight, a hush of bird call too sudden. He stabbed a torch upright and paced. Between tree trunks he glimpsed a figure, a child, barefoot, garbed in a tattered dress, skin pale as frost. It tilted its head, eyes luminous blue. John drew knife, advancing slow. The child mimicked his steps, lips curling in silent question. Without war gift, John had to trust soldier craft. He circled, ensuring no watchers behind. The child watched him measure distance, then smiled, a ghastly stretch revealing frozen gums. Arya emerged from snow, blade low. "Not alone," she whispered. Indeed, branches beyond flickered with more small figures. The plague bred among villages first, families died quickest. John felt sickness twist his gut. He raised voice in free tongue. "You need not remain this shape. Pass on." "Menos." The child cocked its head again, then shrieked. Not a cry, but a keening whistle that vibrated pine needles. Snow blasted outward in a ring. Shadows sprang from drifts, adults twisted by ice, clad in nightshirts, miners' overalls, butcher aprons stiff with congealed gore. Their eyes glowed the same unnatural hue. John shouted alarm. Rangers dashed from tents, bows rising. But arrows would break. Only fire or Valyrian could kill these. Arya hurled torches she prepared, cloth-wrapped brandy flasks lit at the wick. Orange gouts burst, catching clothes, flesh, the snow itself. Ice-dead shrank from flame. Some rushed, flailing, igniting like tinder. Yet as they fell, the blue fire in their eyes leaked upward, forming tendrils that wove into the air, seeking new host. John slashed a tendril with Longclaw. The sword drank light like ink, severing the wisp. But more rose, swirling into a vortex above the clearing. John barked for oil pits. Rangers heaved skins of lamp oil onto flames. Heat roared. The vortex faltered, burning off in spirals. Then a deeper note resonated, like distant horns, but from overhead, inside the swirl. Frost formed star shapes within the flame plumes, smothering them. Fire died. Panic rippled. Arya cut through, screaming orders, cluster, shields, form ring. John drove toward the keening heart. He could not outthink sorcery. He could outdare it. He leapt into the funnel. Cold ripped breath from lungs. Air crackled with unseen teeth. His cloak crystallized stiff. But at the funnel's core hovered a shard, clear, jagged, spinning. A smaller twin of the creature's heart that shattered weeks prior. It pulsed, like a second heart, drawing the blue wisps back to coalesce. John's fingers barely found purchase on the hilt. Leather stiffened to board. Still, he swung. Longclaw met the shard, and stopped. No ring of metal. The Valyrian edge froze mid-impact. A shock raced up John's arm. For a moment he thought the sword itself might crack. Then a fissure etched across the shard. Light bled, dimmed. The shard burst inward, imploding into dust so fine it disappeared. Silence snapped, absent even wind. Around them every plague corpse toppled, eyes extinguishing. The snow seemed to sigh. Arya touched Jon's elbow. "Your lips blue." He tasted bloodless flesh. She guided him out. Rangers stomped embers into safety. Maester Emrys, pulled from sleep, wrapped John in blankets, poured mulled wine. Circulation stung back. Arya knelt before John. That shard was puppet heart. Break the spell, the puppets fall. If more shards command armies. We hunt them, John finished. The march accelerated, scouts combing every hamlet. They found more shards, wedged in wells, hidden in grain barns, buried beneath altars. Each carved with spirals echoing the spear glyphs. Destroying them stilled local plague thralls, but did not reverse infection in living victims. Those bitten succumbed within hours. Mercy killings became grim routine. By the time John's force reached the neck, news traveled faster. Davos column engaged plague hosts near Fair Market and lost 200, before wildfire triangulations torched the dead. The Blackfish coordinated river defenders, but feared siege at River Run could starve thousands. John convened war council at Moat Caelan's ruin, choosing the haunted stones for privacy. Ravens from Bran arrived by miracle. Parchment thin as onion skin, script tiny. The darkness remembers the shape we cut from it. The ice hearts are seeds, break seed, but root escapes. Seek the root in the place where roses rot. Place where roses rot. Highgarden, John told Arya and Davos. They agreed. Drive spear to root, risk everything now or bleed forever. Stannis muster crawled west. They would never reach Highgarden before rot swallowed the reach. John proposed a strike team, cavalry to screen but small corps to infiltrate. Arya, Davos, Val, Rickard, Tormund, any who dared. Word spread, volunteers, abundant. John chose 10. Quiet, lethal, known for discipline. Horses fresh, packs light. They rode night and day across the King's Road, circumventing plague zones by reading smoke pillars. Black smoke for wildfire pyres, white for ice conflagrations where magic turned flames pale. Each distant plume marked another contested hamlet. At Golden Grove orchards they found fields rimed in frost, though the sun glared hot. Apples hung like crystal bells, rotten inside frozen shells. Insects lay encased in sap ice. Shards pulsed at roots until the rangers shattered them with warhammers. The ground cracked, exhaling foul steam. Southwest, the Mander wove silver through blight. Highgarden's 100 towers should have gleamed there. Yet as the riders crested a ridge they saw only ivory ruins glowing under a veil of frost. Vines strangled balustrades, turned brittle glass into thorns. The once lush gardens lay like corpses under lace ice. And at the center, atop what had been the highest spire, a crystal of staggering size floated, shard grown to monolith, taller than Hightower's beacon. It rotated slowly, each facet reflecting blue moonlight, though suns still warmed skies elsewhere. Tendrils extended earthward like roots of a tree made of breath. John's group dismounted behind ridge cover. Ravens were released to warn Stannis. Final route found. Then, they prepared. Arya and John went first, slipping through frost-logged hedges. Every footfall cracked like bones. The air reeked of bruised rose, and something sharp as solder flux. Dead gardeners wandered between paths, pruning nothing, eyes vacant. John motioned Arya to skirt them. They crossed terraces, climbed collapsed music halls, scaled a still-standing archway. Atop a greenhouse roof they surveyed the courtyard beneath the floating shard. Pale radiance pooled, condensing into humanoid shapes. Plague commanders nodded from mist and ice. Dozens. They circled altars where living prisoners, women, children, soldiers, lay bound beneath 4 sprigs. For each bound, the shard lowered a filament, siphoning life in shimmer threads. The victims convulsed, then stilled, yet did not die. They rose, eyes luminous, joining the circle. The shard swelled incrementally. John's jaw tightened. Each life fed the monolith, birthing more commanders. Arya's eyes held flint. Quiet blade, she whispered. John shook his head. No time for stealth. He signaled through luminous whistle arrow. At distance, Davos men lit bombard canisters, wildfire, oil pitch, mounted on crossbow ballista. Tormund's free folk readied rams on gates to draw thralls out. Rickard arranged archers on adjacent hills. The whistle shrilled. Battle exploded. Ballista quarrels streaked green flame. They struck the monolith, detonating. For an instant, shards of glassy ice scattered, but the floating heart recoalesced, absorbing fire. Green light drained into azure. It grew brighter. Yet, distraction thinned its focus. Guards turned outward, leaving prisoners. Arya dropped through a shattered skylight, landing in a roll. Jon followed. Together they cut bonds, her speed uncanny, his strength decisive. Freed prisoners grabbed, dropped weapons. The monolith sensed rebellion. Filaments lashed. One eyes turned captive seized a knife and plunged it into her own chest rather than be reclaimed. She died smiling. Jon's fury ignited. He bellowed for retreat to the west gate. Freed men formed wedge around children. Arya darted ahead, clearing passage. Jon covered rear. A filament speared at him. Reflex raised Longclaw. The sword met the magic. Instead of breaking, it absorbed. Veins of cobalt spreading across the blade. Jon felt vibration reach the hilt, up arm, into chest where the old Warg wound festered. Pain threatened blackout. But deeper than agony lay something else. Echo of ghost. Not quite. A memory of bond, of mingled spirits forging unity. Jon directed the surge into will, not to commune, but to oppose. He reversed grip, hurled the blade point down. Longclaw pinned the filament to the flagstones. The monolith flared, tether momentarily fixed. Arya skid past him, thrust a wildfire vial into his palm. "Center?" she mouthed. Jon grasped plan instantly. He sprinted, dodging more filaments by inches, until he reached the base of a toppled statue of Garth Greenhand. From its root he launched upward, hands finding ivy-slick stone, pulling higher, closer to the epicenter where monolith hearts beat. Longclaw still anchored below, but the filament vibrated violently, trying to slice free. Jon climbed along it like a sailor up rigging. Frost crackled on skin. Breath crystallized tiny dagger shards in beard. He stopped within arm's reach of the heart. Swirling cores, each facet filled with faces of the dying, mouths open in silent plea. He slammed vial into a fissure and smashed with pommel of dagger. Glass splintered. Green jelly wildfire oozed into heart, then white-hot as air touched. Yet wildfire alone might feed the shard as earlier. Jon needed catalyst. He reached inward to the void where war gifts once thrived. He thought of Ghost's last howl, of dire wolves of the first men whose spirits shaped the north. He did not seek to warg. He sought to remember, to imprint the wildfire with living flame instead of death cold. A pulse answered, not ghost, but many small voices. The fire itself, hungry to burn unnatural frost. Jon exhaled his memory into it. Spark leapt. Cracks shot through the monolith. Filaments recoiled, whipping ground, flattening thralls. Blue glow reversed into searing white. Lightning hammered outward. Jon let go. He fell. White blindness swallowed everything. Then came sound, like glaciers fracturing and mountains collapsing into seas. The courtyard ripped open, shards raining. Fire chased frost, the two elements devouring each other in roaring spiral. Jon struck roof tiles, rolled, smashed through and landed on compost heap in lower conservatory. Breath punched out. The world thundered around him. He pushed up, staggering outside. Above, the monolith disintegrated fully, raining motes that melted on air. Thralls collapsed as empty suits, ice evaporating from their skin. Prisoners fled, archers whooped. Arya sprinted across rubble, tackled Jon in relief hug, then helped him stand. His cloak smoked, frostbite and burn marks mingled. But he lived. Davos column breached central gate, finishing pockets of resistance. By dusk fires burned, controlled across gardens to purge infection. Ravens launched bearing word. Root severed. Plague might dwindle. Jon sat on a stone bench once carved with love verses. He watched embers dance. Tormund approached, offering skin of goat milk mead. Jon drank, grimaced, but thankful. Tormund squinted at him. Thought we'd lose you again, Crow. You looked half wraith up there. Jon shrugged. Half is all I have left. Half's enough when used proper. Night settled. Survivors tended wounded, children curled in blankets inside overturned market stalls. Arya patrolled ramparts with freed mutineers, now sworn to her informal guard. Val organized healers, establishing triage under grape arbors. Davos sent swiftest rider to Stannis, advising victory and urging quarantine lifts only after 3 full moon cycles. Jon wandered alone toward Outer Terrace, whence inscription stones overlooked shadowed orchards. He sat, aching bones singing. Somewhere distant wolves howled. Ordinary gray wolves of the Reach Hills, no great spirits. He listened anyway, letting their cadence soak. A breeze stirred hair at his brow. For a heartbeat he thought he smelled ghost. Pine, snow, iron. The old ache pricked, but did not bleed. He placed a hand on cold stone and whispered, not a prayer, but a promise to remember. Footsteps approached. Bran's raven. One bright eye clouded, the other sharp, flapped down, landing on parapet beside him. It carried no scroll, only looked at Jon, cocked head, and cawed thrice. Jon met the small gaze. Tell him I understand, he murmured. The bird cawed again, then flew. Weeks later, in the rose-scarred ruins where Highgarden's great keep once stood, the first green shoots broke through ashy soil. Scholars argued whether magic accelerated growth. Farmers swore old gods blessed renewal. Jon suspected both and neither. Life endures, that is enough. Stannis honored agreements. Granted free folk settlement rights in lands long fallow, named Val Warden of Tumbleton for interim. Offered Jon a crown again. Jon declined, citing duties north. He accepted only a new direwolf banner stitched by Reach women, silver wolf on field of midnight blue, eyes of scarlet thread. Not ghost. Ghost of ghost, tribute to what was lost. Arya rode east chasing her own legends. Davos returned south to oversee rebuilding trade. Tormund took his folk beyond Broken Arm, seeking warmer game. Yet all left pieces of themselves here, among thawing roses. Before departure, Jon visited the Heart Garden one last dawn. Frost still edged petals. He knelt, planting a single wolf's tooth, found in the ashes of Ghost's pyre, beneath a young briar. Maester Emrys doubted but humored him. Jon covered it with soil, spoke 5 words. Run far. Guard the living. Nemsumesh. He stood, the void inside no longer aching, merely silent. He wondered whether someday another would feel the old bonds return. Perhaps a child yet unborn. Perhaps never. Magic chooses its tide. Jon mounted Horfang turned north. Behind him the sun climbed, igniting dewy gardens in gold. Ahead stretched leagues of road, pale ribbons between green and snow. He welcomed the miles, the chores of rebuilding, the common talk of grain and fences. Hero songs would fade. That suited him. On the ridge he looked back. A breeze ruffled leaves of briar. For an instant he thought he saw movement at its base, the flick of a ghost-white tail vanishing into shade. He said nothing, only breathed cold air that somehow tasted warmer than any day since winter began. Then nudged his horse onward. The road carried him home. Horfang's hooves beat a steady cadence along the King's Road, and Jon Snow let the rhythm roll through his bones like heart blood. The steed's breath plumed in pale curls that drifted back into the dawn, vanishing as quickly as they formed. Spring was returning to the north in hesitant increments, ribbons of meltwater threading the ditches, a hint of green teasing the alder buds, yet flecks of night frost still glittered on the verge. Jon kept his hood tucked low, more from habit than cold. 1,000 leagues lay behind him, yet each mile ahead felt heavier, freighted with tasks waiting to be shouldered. 3 riders trailed at a respectful distance. Maester Emrys, quills rattling in his satchel. Quinn, a free-folk scout whose eyes missed little. And Sir Elaine Rivers, the rangy bastard of Maidenpool, who had sworn to replace Arya until the wolf sister returned. They spoke little. In war Jon had learned the worth of silent company. Souls who neither cajoled nor questioned, while a commander sifted worries in his skull. Castle Black rose by mid-afternoon, a stark silhouette against the ragged wall of ice. Smoke drifted from the rebuilt kitchens, black cloaks flapped on rope lines. The scent of oat bread and tallow mixed with sharper notes of hot iron from the forges. John reined in at the outer gate and stared up at the familiar ramparts. When last he stood here, Ghost trotted at his side, head low, eyes bright with secret remarks only John could hear. A breath caught behind his ribs. He set heel to flank and rode through. The courtyard swallowed him in shouts of greeting before he could dismount. Brothers of the watch lined the steps, faces soot-smudged and wind-burned, but smiling. They called him Lord Commander still, though he had worn no black these 3 years. He clasped arms, answered questions, promised tales over ale, then pushed toward the king's tower, where granite spiral stairs led to the solar kept for former lords of the night's watch. The chamber smelled of dust, parchment, and pine resin from a single candle stub. There he found messages waiting. Ravens from Davos, terse and reassuring. Plague pockets dwindling faster than maesters predicted. Scrolls from Val describing free folk enclaves settling hills outside Tumbleton. Stubborn soil, eager hunters, spirits high. A loop-handed scrawl from Tormund, boasting of a white bear twice the size of ordinary cousins, now providing fur for every babe in his clan. And one letter from Bran, written in shrift so small Emrys had to fetch a spyglass. The rivers remember the storms we carved. Seeds of ice will not sprout where the summers sing. Beware the places where no song is heard. John folded that last warning, unreadable as usual, and tucked it beneath an iron candle holder. Night fell swift. He visited the rookery, brushing fingers along perches where ravens croaked at his scent. None bowed their heads for a skin-changer's caress. Still he murmured soft greetings. Down in the yard, mess tables brimmed with stew and oat bread. Laughter drifted upward. He took an empty tower walkway instead, letting the sky's scrawl of stars remind him of distances larger than memory. Beyond the wall, the frozen wasteland glinted beneath wan moons. Part of him yearned to pace those plains again, yet the pull of winter's past no longer set his feet moving. Duty had changed shape, as Ghost once had. So must he. The next morning, he summoned the captains of every village, strung between Eastwatch and the Shadow Tower. They gathered in the mess hall, raw-boned rangers beside thick-armed spearwives, gnarled fishermen, and lanky boys barely old enough to wield pikes. Maps spread across trestle tables showed grain stores, bottlenecks, marsh roads submerged by meltwater. John pointed to the ragged gap south of the Fist of the First Men. Here, he said. A spillway opened during the thaw. The river carved 10 feet beneath the ground line before freezing again. When spring surges, that cut will widen. It threatens every hamlet in the foothills. Bemsawadran. The captains shifted, muttering. One asked why the South Lords should care for free folk villages. Another quipped that water solved problems bodies still breathing caused. John did not raise his voice. He tapped the map again. If flood destroys the foothills, refugees choke Castle Black and every holdfast from the gorge to Molestown. Shelter collapses. Famine follows. Then plague. He let that word hang. We did not bleed at Highgarden to let water and rot finish what ice could not. So they listened. Crews were assigned to fell spruce and pine, to build retaining bulwarks, to dredge spillways. Others pledged wagons of seed grain and salt pork once roads cleared. John distributed tasks until every captain bore responsibility heavier than doubt. Over the next fortnight, he rode the line of camps, inspecting dikes, shoring walls with his own shovel when time allowed. Children carried stones in aprons. Septus fetched water for mason mortar. Giant narwhal harpooners from hard home-hammered pilings, deeper than any ram sled could manage. At dusk communal fires blazed. Maidens danced round logs, braids slapping shoulders. John watched from a stump, content despite the wedge of loneliness lodged under his sternum. Rain arrived early one evening, a warm slant that softened snow into crystal mush. John stood atop a half-finished berm beside Quinn when sudden hush cut through the hammering drops. The air tightened, expectant. Quinn raised her spear, scanning the tree line. A howling note rose. Not a wolf, not exactly. Higher pitched, layered, almost like flutes carved from frozen breath. Trees shivered, as if wind pressed opposite their trunks. John's skin pebbled. The howl echoed thrice, then fell. Rangers formed quick arcs, bows ready. John signaled stillness. Nothing moved. After an hour, the rain slackened, an ordinary night. Woodland sounds returned, timid as mice. Back in camp, Maester Emrys thumbed dusty tomes. "There are legends," he muttered, "of snow sirens, white spirits that mourn the fall of their first prophets. Their cry presages the birth of new sorrows." Sir Elaine spat into the coals. "I'll wager a cask of mead it's bandits with bone flutes." John offered neither comfort nor dismissal. He slept lightly, hand on dagger. The cry returned twice in coming days, always distant, always at edge of hearing. The spillway fortifications neared completion when the flood struck. Snow melt surged south, roaring around dikes, battering pilings. The bulwark groaned but held. Villagers cheered atop the ridge. That night, the howling came again, closer. A sentry vanished from his post. By dawn they found him sprawled near a rivulet, lips rimed with frost despite the thaw. 2 puncture wounds marred his neck, but no blood remained in the corpse. Word of a leech thing spread. Panic flickered. Spears now bristled beyond hedges. Mothers rushed children inside at dusk. John studied the body. The wounds lacked gnaw marks, skin around them bruised purple, veins spidering outward blue-black. Stranger still, the fingertips had broken, as though the man clawed at icy cavern walls. Maester Emrys's chalkboards, filled with diagrams of blood flow arrested by cold magics. He proposed the creature drank heat instead of fluid, flash freezing blood chambers. No precedent existed, but precedent rarely governed northern nights. John dispatched Quinn and Elaine with 2 squads to track the hunt. They followed prints into ravines where icicles dangled like teeth. One ranger slipped, touching a shard with bare hand. Flesh blistered instantly, frostbite climbing his wrist despite spring air. Deeper, they found a hollow bowl half buried by scree. It gave off a breath so chill their torches guttered. Elaine flung wildfire at the opening. It guttered, fizzed, smoked. The flame dulled to ash before touching wood. They marked the gorge's coordinates and returned to John. He ordered dig teams to excavate, but kept villages distant. As spades bit earth, foul vapors wafted, scent of old brine and grave lilies. They uncovered stone steps descending into darkness older than watchtowers above. John descended first, scorning objections. 30 feet down the stairway ended at a chamber where greenish ice sheathed walls in veins like marble. In the center crouched a structure, half altar, half cocoon, formed of fused rib bones taller than men. Within pulsed a shape like a sleeping bat, wings furled, body slender, face masked by translucent membrane. It glimmered silver beneath torchlight, exhaling that flute-like cry with every slow breath. Longclaw cleared its scabbard. Yet John hesitated. The cocoon beams seemed carved from human rib, not beast. There were 4, each bearing notches where vertebrae once locked. Sacrifice had built this cradle. He touched the membrane with the sword tip. Frost spidered along the steel, but held. The winged shape flinched, exhaled a chord. John sensed, not through ghost sense, but through battle-earned instinct, that if the creature woke fully, the North would remember winter in ways glaciers never taught. He backed away. "Seal the stair," he ordered. "No torch, no breath passes here." Back in daylight, he convened elders and maester. They weighed choices: destroy the lair, starve the thing, entomb it. Emrys worried fragmenting might scatter power seeds like the shards at Highgarden. Burying left threat for later generations. Burning seemed impossible. Blame died near the cradle. John stared at the camp's pups rolling in sodden ash, remembered warmth of Ghost's fur. He absently stroked the direwolf banner on his cloak. "We need the dragon." Emrys sputtered. Dragons were gone. Only Drogon remained, last seen circling Valeria's smoking wastes if rumor held. John gestured to Bran's cryptic warnings. "Seek the song." Roses had sung once. Perhaps dragonfire was a song powerful enough here. Letters flew south, west, across narrow seaports. They sought Daenerys Stormborn, rumored queen in exile. No answers returned for moons. Meanwhile, Frostkill spread outward from the hidden gorge. Grass browned overnight, saplings cracked, pools filmed with ice under midsummer sun. Diashao. Livestock slaughtered in barns froze solid before morning. Refugees fled again, this time from cold rather than water. Jon felt dread coil. His men rotated garrison around the buried stair, torches doused lest stray sparks feed enchantments. The winged creature's cry seeped through earth at dusk, guiding nightmares across tents. Rangers killed each other in sleep, driven insane by flute notes only they heard. One evening Quinn slammed a wineskin on Jon's desk. "Your great legions of South Lords dither. Ghastly death hunts our door while you wait for a dragon that may be myth. How many more lads lose mind before we carve heart from that corpse?" "Bass." Jon did not rebuke her fury. "Fire alone can end this," he said. "Steel shattered ice at Highgarden only after wildfire borrowed my own blood. We break this coffin with ordinary blades. We risk scattering its spirit into 10,000 songs of death." Quinn spat, but stalked out without further protest. They reinforced the blockade, posted warding glyphs copied from Children of the Forest. Yet the nights worsened. Frost creeped into nails of the living, waking them with needle stings. Sentries hallucinated white silhouettes dancing beyond the campfire rings. Supply wagons frost cracked their wheels even as flint sparked warm. On the 41st day since sealing the stair, raven wings beat across the morning haze. A scrap of parchment tied to the leg bore a sigil unfamiliar, a 3-branched flame inside a storm spiral. The message read, "Dragonfire rides your wind. Hold fast until new moon." No signature. Jon's chest tightened. He wrote back coordinates and battle signs, sent the bird. Preparations resumed. Evacuation lines, fallback trenches, oil pots, beacon pyres on surrounding hills. New moon arrived cloaked in sable clouds. The gorge churned with mist luminous as mercury. Jon took the ridge alone, long claw drawn. Quinn shadowed just behind, though he had ordered none. She would not leave. From the eastern horizon, a thunder rumble gathered. Cloud banks boiled, birthing streaks of scarlet. Something vast roared above the overcast, heavy enough to shake soil. Then a spear of blackness burst downward. Drogon, grown monstrous, wingspan eclipsing villages. Flames wreathed his maw, but not orange. Deep violet edged with green, wildfire transmuted. Atop his neck rode a figure in scaled leather of midnight teal. White hair whipped like comet tail. She guided the beast with no tether, only palm upon obsidian ridges. When she drew close, Jon saw her eyes still burned purple as twilight. Daenerys died. She banged Drogon over the gorge. The dragon screamed. Anger, challenge, perhaps recognition of kinship with the creature below. Frost in the valley recoiled. Jon signaled archers to stand down. Drogon folded wings, descended in spirals, vaporizing mist. The ground trembled. His talons touched earth outside the filled-in stair. Daenerys slid from the saddle, strode across churned mud toward Jon. She wore no crown, no heralds followed. Only the aura of someone who had shed and reclaimed worlds. "Your ravens found me deep in storms where names crumble," she said in low Valyrian. "Tell me why I should risk the last true flame on this frozen whisper." Jon held her gaze. "Because you still fight for the living." She studied him a long moment. No warmth sparked. Grief too similar haunted them both. Finally she nodded once. "Show me the beast." Workers hauled timbers aside, revealing cracked slab that sealed the stair. Frost breath vented. Drogon sniffed, lips curling. Daenerys touched his cheek. "Dracarys," she whispered in a tone different from war. Drogon angled his head, released a thin gout of green-violet flame. The slab glowed, then sagged, stone fusing until it parted like wax. Jon smelled brimstone and pine. They descended together. Jon, Queen, Daenerys, 2 hand-picked torchbearers trailing. Flame curled around Drogon's snout, but the beast could only nudge head first. Passage too narrow for body. He lingered at top, growling. At the chamber the cradle still pulsed, yet weaker now, as though hunger gnawed its own bones. Daenerys circled it. The membrane stretched taut. Beneath, the slender being stirred. She traced a rib arch with gloved fingertip. "Dragon bone," she murmured. "But shaped by foul craft." Jon recounted plague shards, ice hearts, stolen blood. She listened, expression unreadable. This is no ice white, she decided. It is a child bred from dragon lament and northern sorcery, a final vengeance of those who fell to dragonfire long ago. Quinn spat. "Child or not, it slaughters our watch." Daenerys' hand hovered above the membrane. "Let us end the cycle." She stepped back. Drogon exhaled flame into the stair, the torrent sweeping down like a torrent of liquid starlight, wrapping the cocoon. The membrane flared blue, resisting. Frost formed spirals across the chamber roof. Fighting flame. Jon braced shield arm against lance winds. Daenerys drew a dagger of pale glass. She advanced through flame, unharmed, as though heat parted for her will. At the cradle, she plunged the blade where two ribs met. The glass shattered, embedding shards into the creature inside. A scream erupted, tripled, quadrupled, every flute-like cry merging into one agonized chord. Drogon's fire turned white. The cradle split. Wings of the unborn snapped outward, ablaze, then crumbled to ash before touching air. The scream cut off. All frost retreated, shunting down the stair in weeping streams. Steam vented upward. Silence. Only glowing embers remained. Daenerys collected one small shard of rib bone, still white-hot, and dropped it into a pouch of wet sand hissing. She turned to Jon, eyes shining with unshed tears. "My children were forged for conquest," she whispered. "Now their bones guard the world instead of scourging it. Let that be my legacy." Jon inclined head. Words felt brittle, so he held none. Outside the camp, people emerged, blinking at warm breeze surging from the gorge. Grass already twitched green where frost had murdered it. Mothers wept. Fathers laughed. Rangers eyed Drogon with awe that eclipsed dread. Knights' watch banners and freefolk sigils mingled in one line of color, as sunrise gilded the world. Daenerys mounted Drogon, but before wings lifted she called to Jon. "You gave up magic to save men," she said. "Perhaps one day magic returns, when you need it least but understand it best. Remember the promise in empty hands." Then Drogon vaulted skyward, leaving swirling drafts that smelled faintly of myrrh and smoke. They dwindled east, toward sunrise. Weeks slipped by. Jon oversaw dismantling of watch camps, redistribution of surplus to riverlands still rebuilding. Refugees resettled, thawed meadows in the gift. Maester Emrys drafted new oaths binding watch, free folk, and southern lords to mutual defense equal under law. In the hall of Castle Black, Jon signed with steady quill beneath Daenerys Targaryen's flame, sigil and King Stannis, crowned stag. He sealed nothing for himself. One dusk, striding the outer yards, Jon saw movement near the kennels. A stableboy coaxed a pale pup from under trough boards. Fur like winter sunrise, eyes pale gray flecked by crimson at the rim. The pup's tail twitched uncertainly. When it spotted Jon, it padded forward, wobbling on oversized paws. The boy bowed hurriedly. "Found her out by the briar carts, my lord. Wouldn't come for milk till now." Jon knelt. The pup sniffed his hand, then licked. A slow tremor ran through him. Not the old bond, but a gentle echo, distant thunder of a remembered sea. He smiled. Not power, perhaps, but possibility. He lifted the little wolf gently. She nosed his chin and yipped soft. "What name, my lord?" the boy asked. Jon stroked the pup's ears. "Thong," he said, thinking of Bran's riddles, roses that sang, Daenerys' warning, and the silence inside him, finally humming with quiet hope. "Her name is Song." The pup yipped again, as if agreeing that in the hush between storms, even the faintest music could guide lost hearts home. And Jon Snow, scarred by voids yet stitched by dawns, carried the small life against his chest as he walked the ramparts, breathing deep the scents of thawed earth, pine resin, and far-off summer, until the shadows of night folded labor-tired men into dreams free of ice and plague, and the wall itself seemed to soften, no longer a barrier, but a remembrance of trial,